Coming up on a paper talk today, we'll be looking at what is going on with the bids for Matthijs de Ligt and, of course, Mazraoui. It looks like the bid's been rejected, but it doesn't look like it's over. There's a bit of a twist, and Manchester United ready to go in again. Plus, we'll have a little bit of an update on what is going with some of our outgoings. Let's check it out. Jay here from Stretford Paddock. This is the paper talk. As you can see, I'm not outside Old Trafford or in the studio or in my kitchen. I'm in South Carolina, where we are covering Manchester United's tour. The final game of the US tour is against Liverpool later on today. The part of the rivals in red. Series of games, or double header, if you will. So you can check out some of our content from that match later on. We're going to be meeting some fans as well. And then obviously we're going to have a watch along in the studio. We're going to have post-match reaction and hopefully speak to a player in the mix zone after the game. So make sure you're hitting subscribe so you don't miss any of that good stuff. Now, the news this morning is focusing again on Matthijs de Ligt and Mazraoui coming from Bayern Munich to Manchester United or not, as it stands, because basically we had the news that United had put in a bid for both these players, and now it seems like those bids have been rejected. I think that James Ducker in the Telegraph and one or two others reporting that as well, and that Manchester United are surprised because they've spoken to the players' teams. Seems the players are happy to come to Manchester United. It's just a bit of a sticking point with how much it's going to cost to get those two players to Old Trafford, and as it stands, Bayern Munich not having it with the bids that have been submitted. Well, that doesn't mean they're not having it full stop. United have been surprised. The players' agents, apparently, according to reports, have been surprised. But United are willing to keep going. I don't think this is the end of it. There's a little bit of a twist here with the fact that the bids have been rejected and it's caused a bit of a shock. But Manchester United should be going back in with fresh bids. And listen, there's a little bit of a merry-go-round, it seems, with some of these signings that we're aiming for. We spoke yesterday, I think it was, about United going for Manuel Ugarte and hoping that PSG's pursuit of João Neves would mean that they'd be more willing to sell. That's what some papers were reporting. The Evening Standard, I think, said that PSG were ready to be a bit kinder towards Manchester United, I think was the word they used, in terms of bid for Ugarte. Now, when it comes to Bayern Munich, they've also got players they're targeting. According to Florian Plettenberg, they've not given up on signing Jonathan Tah from Bayer Leverkusen. Jonathan Tah is reportedly willing to go to the Allianz Arena. It's just a bit of a sticking point over the fee there. Now, you feel if Bayern Munich can get that Jonathan Tah deal done, or they can get a little bit more money in from selling perhaps Matthijs de Ligt and Mazraoui, then they can get the player they want. And Manchester United can get the players we want from Bayern Munich. So at the minute, it feels like there's a bit of wheeler dealing going on, where it's like one club's after this player, and when they get that player, then they're willing to sell the other player to Manchester United. So you can file the likes of de Ligt and Mazraoui under the same sort of bracket, under the same header as you would file Manuel Ugarte, in the sense that we're waiting for the selling club to either get the players in they want or just to offer a little bit of leeway when it comes to the fee. Get involved in the chat in the comments and let us know what you think about this, because Manchester United obviously have had a decent start to the transfer window in bringing in Joshua Zirkzee and bringing in Leny Yoro, but it's kind of been undermined a little bit with that injury to Leny Yoro. Obviously, that's, you can't blame anyone for that. But now we've gone from a position where it's a positive start to that transfer window, where as we're getting into the last couple of weeks of pre-season, you're looking at going, we're in worse shape now than we were at the end of last season, because at the end of last season, you look at that FA Cup final, we had the likes of Lisandro Martinez, Rafael Varane, we had Harry Maguire, of course, Victor Lindelof as options at centre-back, Willy Kambwala. Willy Kambwala's gone out. Obviously, we sold him, so he's gone. Then you look at what's happened with Rafael Varane. He's gone, he's left. Obviously, his contract came to an end. So now Manchester United, who had an injury-ravaged season last season with defenders, are probably worse off than we were last season. Yes, we've given Jonathan Evans a new deal. And yes, fingers crossed, touch wood, anything you can do. Lisandro Martinez should be fit and back in the team, but we're still a little bit short. So it would be good to see Manchester United getting de Ligt over the line, because that is obviously another centre-back. And a centre-back that could start. I think you look at the signings of Zirkzee, probably to a lesser extent Yoro, but you think, were they definitely going to start? I think Zirkzee, I wouldn't expect him to. Yoro probably could have started alongside Lisandro Martinez, but being injured, he can't. Summer is well and truly here, and our friends at Manscapes have got you covered with their brand new performance package, Ultra 5.0, because during the summer you can get a bit hot and sticky and sweaty. We're hot and sticky and sweaty in South Carolina, but thanks to Manscapes, our nether regions aren't hot, sticky and sweaty, and they look the part, because with the performance package 5.0 Ultra, you get the lawnmower 5.0 Ultra with its two interchangeable skin safe blades. So there's no more of that getting nicks and cuts and all that business and having to hold a torch. You've got a good LED light on your Lawnmower 5.0 so you can see what you're doing. You've got the two interchangeable blades, and using the code Paddock Tour, clicking on that link in the description, you've got 20% off. And you don't just get the Lawnmower 5.0, which would be phenomenal if you just got that. You also get the Weed Whacker for your nose and ear hair. You get the Crop Preserver, you get the Ball Toner, you get the Boxer Briefs, you get the Shed Travel Bag to put it all in. So you get all that good stuff with Manscaped. Just make sure you use the code Paddock Tour. Click on the link in the description. 20% off and free shipping, and you can have a nice smooth sack this summer. Now, this doesn't feel like we're panicking. We're going, oh, well, Lenioro's injured, we've got to get in the Ligt, because we've been pursuing the Ligt for quite some time. It always felt like Manchester United were going to bring in two centre-backs. The Jared Branthwaite transfer seems to be, I wouldn't say dead in the water, but it seems to have cooled a little bit. Everton playing hardball there, wanting 70 million quid for the youngster. However, Bayern Munich, despite not accepting the Manchester United bid, should be willing to do business for a lot less than 70 million quid. I think the numbers being touted are around the 40 million euro mark, which would make sense for a player who is still only 24 years old, hasn't had the greatest time at the Allianz Arena, but it hasn't been a disaster, and he's a player that can offer Manchester United that kind of progression out of defence that we're after as well. In terms of Mazraoui, some of that seems to depend again on what's going on elsewhere. Now, if Mazraoui is going to come in, does that mean we're going to have loads of right-backs? Probably not as many as you think, because Aaron Wan-Bissaka, his move to West Ham, it's not completed or even looking close to completion, but it still is potentially happening. I think West Ham are still pursuing Aaron Wan-Bissaka. So again, you're in this sort of mix where you go in, it's a bit of a merry-go-round. It's like if Wan-Bissaka goes out, does that mean that we can maybe up our bid a little bit for Mazraoui? If Bayern Munich getting Jonathan Tah, does that mean they're going to be a little bit easier with Matthijs de Ligt? If PSG getting João Neves, or what's happening with the now Neves deal may affect what goes on with Manuel Ugarte. Bit frustrating because you want signings done quicker or sooner rather than later. But one thing I take a bit of comfort from is, unlike previous seasons with Manchester United, you go back to Erik ten Hag's first summer where there was a bit of a panic, a bit of a scramble. It felt sort of rushed. 1 minute we wanted Adrian Rabiot and Marko Arnautovic, and the next minute we wanted Antony and Casemiro. We ended up spending a lot of money for both those players after the season has started. Doesn't feel like this right now, but we'll have to wait and see what Ineos do, because Ineos are playing, I wouldn't say playing hardball, but they're not going to be spending the money like we saw under the likes of Richard Arnold and Woodward. Ineos obviously are being a little bit more careful with how they spend money, and PSR does come into it. Now, one option, I've mentioned this earlier in other videos, is selling Scott McTominay to Fulham. Again, though, we're waiting to see what happens there. What you don't want is Manchester United selling Aaron Wan-Bissaka, selling Scott McTominay, and not getting the players that we need and the players that we want. You don't want to see any panic buys, any rush buys. If someone like a guy has to be a low move, I can live with that. It's not ideal, but it means we get a midfielder in, who I think would fit in very well in the Manchester United midfield alongside the likes of Kobbie Mainoo and Bruno Fernandes. And don't forget as well, Joe always mentions this, you've got Mason Mount almost like a new signing. I know it's a cliche, but he barely played last season. And as a player there, we've seen glimpses of it in pre-season. We know what he's capable of because we saw it at Chelsea. So he could get, or should get, a lot more minutes and hopefully have a bit of an impact. It's been a decent pre-season so far in terms of what we've seen from some of the younger players as well. Harry Amas has thrown himself into the mix. Amad Diallo, we know what he's about. He's obviously had a very good pre-season. There's a lot of people, Stephen Alsey included, suggesting that he even deserves to start. So there's been positive moves, but those two injuries to Rasmus Højlund and Lenioro threw a big spanner in the works. Then you got injuries to Marcus Rashford and Antony as well. So that's frustrating. Then you've got this sort of stagnation of the deals a little bit where you thought, okay, De Ligt could happen any minute now. Now it seems like there's a little bit more waiting. A bit of a more waiting game going on, which is fine. You expect it to happen. But as long as Manchester United can get these deals done, I think we can have a solid window. I think if we can get in Matthijs de Ligt, big ifs, but if we can, and Noussair Mazraoui, and we can maybe bring in Manuel Ugarte, all of a sudden you're looking at that and going, not a bad window. A window that makes sense. We're going to have to be patient with some of these players. We're going to have to be patient with how long it's going to take to revamp this team. But as it stands, Manchester United, surprised by Bayern Munich stance, but not so shocked and surprised that they've given up. They're going back in for those players, and there's every chance they can get them as well, because the gettable players, the fees that are being quoted, aren't astronomical, and Manchester United obviously needs to strengthen, and we have got players we can sell. Aaron Wan-Bissaka and Scott McTominay are players that you can get rid of for a chunk of change. I think Scott McTominay we're holding out for 25 million. Aaron Wan-Bissaka, anything around the 15 million pound mark. So if you can bring in 40 million, don't forget as well, Scott McTominay is pure profit, then that makes a lot of sense. And making a lot of sense isn't something you'd associate with Manchester United post Sir Alex Ferguson, but that is how business is being done with Ineos. Make sure you're getting involved in the comments. Make sure you are hitting like, share, and subscribe. More content coming up over the next few days. Well, more content coming up every day on Stretford Paddock. You know that, but we're going to be covering the game later on today. There's going to be a watch along in the studio, and we're going to have post-match reaction from the Snapdragon, not the Snapdragon Stadium. I'm talking rubbish, from the William Bryce Stadium. We're in South Carolina, not San Diego. Let's get it right. So we're going to have all the match reaction from them. So I've been Jay Moy. This has been the Paper Talk. Thanks for watching.